Always some sort of issue. We're good now. So welcome to Your Brand, Your Business 2020. Um, so a couple of announcements to start. We're kind of changing a little bit of the dynamic of the show. Starting first of all with officially making Noah a host of the show. So round of applause for Noah. Round of
Thank
applause
you.
for him. He's done it.
I'd like to thank the Academy, and
He's
I'd like to. Oh,
Oh no, I had a good joke for this. Ready? You're a
uh,
bit like for the boomers. You're a bit like Steve Martin in that you've hosted the show so many times and been on it. Everyone just thinks you're a cast member, but you're actually not. See, and he's a boomer, and he gets that.
I get that because I'm not a boomer, you jerk. But yeah,
Okay.
no, I get it. I get it.
I in 2020 I moved out of Galen's apartment. I have my own space now. Cool posters behind me. Here, I'm going to show off a
Yeah,
little bit. You may look at that.
that's
Nope.
actually really intense.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think I've seen all of it together, just on the random FaceTimes that we've had together.
Yeah, so that's pretty sick. I'm very happy with how that came out. Um, so yeah, and the other thing that we're doing is we are updating how we're doing the content for 2020. We're doing, I think, 6 show increments now. If a hot
Hmm.
topic comes up where it's finance related or legally related or has legal, it touches on the
Implications.
implications. Yeah, big words, requirement. Then we're gonna hop on and do that as necessary. As always, though, if anyone has any pressing issues they want us to talk about, we'll be doing that. So we've got the next 6 weeks of shows, including this week, kind of mapped out. And today we're talking about a question that you and I get quite a bit, whether it's in DMs on Twitter, DMs on Instagram, con meetings, just some
I
random
would say
guy throwing
it's.
a brick at us.
I would say it's the number one question I get on panels, like at TwitchCon and stuff. And I'm gonna take the lead there. Should streamers have an LLC?
And for the longest while, it depends on where you are in your broadcasting career, your own risk tolerance. But something that happened near the end of 2019 changed that, and it's a California law called AB5.
Right.
And we'll get into that a little bit, but we want to talk broadly about some things about employees and contractors and give you the back
Right.
story on that because it's going to help influence
So
your knowledge here.
so the old answer that we used to give everybody was it is good to have an LLC because or some sort of legal entity, and that's where I'm going to pause and say everything that I'm about to say is for legal informational purposes only. I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer yet. So your circumstances will almost always be different. So we have a disclaimer. Thank you, Chef Hazmat. But this is for information and not specific advice. So that said, we used to always say, hey, get an entity of some sort, whether it's an LLC, a corporation, whatever, have you, um, and because one, it gives you potential tax benefits, but primarily it also gives you a liability shield. Since most of what we do on this platform, Twitch and Mixer, etc., is stream copyrighted content, there's an argument to be said that it's illegal. Everything that we do
Well, it
would be
wasn't
legal.
your favorite joke slash harsh reality to tell people, especially broadcasters, was that, hey, just so you know, everything you do is illegal and you shouldn't be doing it.
Right. Yes, exactly. And so what I say is typically, hire, an attorney, get an LLC formed to properly protect yourself, just in case, Grand Theft Auto comes, yelling at you for doing, role playing and stuff. So, but that
But I
said,
want to
now
be a cowboy
you
in
can
Red
be a
Dead.
cowboy. Oh my God, you can be a cowboy, but I have no come back to that.
There's a
That was,
snake in my boot.
oh
Somebody
God,
poisoned the well.
water hole.
Oh, is it Waterhole? I think it's
Okay,
well.
boomer.
Okay.
Um, so anyways, but now we have a new reason to say, hey, you guys probably need an LLC, and that's because the California AB5 regulation has changed how employees and independent contractors, workers, are classified. And so we'll kind of get into that, but a lot of people don't know the difference between an employee and an independent contractor. So an independent contractor,
Well,
do
do
you know the difference?
I was gonna say I see that all the time because it's like, hey, I want to hire this person, and I'm talking with them. It's like, well, do you mean you want to put them on payroll, which
Mm-hmm.
means you get a different tax form and a completely different tax treatment, um, Or are you just hiring them for a project and 1099ing them, which again has different implications? And I think you were about to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So what I would say is, there's a huge difference between employees and independent contractors, and that's, first of all, this most commonly as, do they receive a 1099 or a W-2? And so that's how everybody kind of interacts with those classifications on a day-to-day basis when they file their taxes. But if you're a contractor, there's a lot of things that aren't being done for you as a worker. So one, you don't usually get benefits such as health insurance, group life, etc. You don't have retirement accounts provided. Um, you're on your own for everything, and you have to provide your own materials, figure out, find your own clients, etc. An employee works for a company. They are entitled to those benefits, that health insurance, those retirement accounts. They also can act as an agent for their company. And they can file for unemployment if they're wrongfully terminated. And there's also a lot of hiring and firing procedures. Those are state specific in some cases, but federal in some cases, that protect employees. And so you're also subject to local and federal employment laws, including overtime if you're an employee. Now, if you're an independent contractor, you don't get any of that. And the most common way that you can think of an employee versus an independent contractor is, I'm a lawyer. I work for a law firm. I'm an employee of that law firm. I go 9 to 5, do my job there. I love it too. An independent contractor is someone who comes along and does one-off work. So, for example, a law firm could hire, a business development person as an independent contractor to perform, to help them develop a business development strategy, figure out their marketing and whatnot. So, that is the old employee versus independent contractor soup to nuts kind of thing. Yep. Very quickly.
Yeah, and some of the other differences, I've got some notes here in our show notes, is that, independent contractors tend to be project based, right? So specifically, like you just alluded to, I'm going to hire someone to do this specific graphic design for me, and that's it. And I'm going to pay them for that work. Whereas an employee, I'm paying salary. I've got to find stuff for them to do. If I have an in-house graphic designer, I'm paying for the Photoshop license or whatever software. I'm providing them with a workstation. I'm supervising them and changing the adjustments as it goes. And the interesting thing about the employee versus independent contractor discussion is that it varies per industry, right? So it's not, in a law firm, it may be you're an independent contractor, and if you do the same thing and say, for example, in an accounting firm, you would not be. If you work in logistics, you're a trucking company. That we have an example.
I want to throw something out there. We just got a great question in chat that we're about to dive right into from is that BDII. BDII asks, is an Uber driver considered an independent contractor? Well, let me tell you something. We're going to talk about that today specifically.
Well, and AB5, some would say, I have this in the notes. Noah, this is kind of getting a little ahead of it, but would you say that AB5 was kind of crafted to target Uber and Lyft?
Yeah, so AB5 is a California regulation that passed. That is AB5, not like 85. Excuse my diction. So it basically directly targets the gig economy of Uber, Lyft, etc. So that's a great question. AB5 comes from something called the Dynamex case, which was heard and ruled upon in the Supreme Court of California. Basically, Dynamex was this delivery company that 1 year decided to turn its employees into independent contractors. So this is like a common labor cost tactic that Uber and Lyft have tried to take advantage of instead of employing a bunch of people and having to pay them benefits and whatnot, such as health insurance, retirement accounts, everything we just talked about. They hired them on as independent contractors. And so that made it so they don't have to withhold as much. They don't have to pay benefits. It's a lot easier to hire and fire people. It's truly a labor cost tactic.
Yep. Sorry to cut you off, but if you are in a labor-intensive business like Uber and Lyft is, if you look at the cost of it, if it's not the cars, right, because they don't use the cars, it's the driver pool. So for a labor-intensive business, this can end up saving you 20 to 30% in labor costs. And to break that down very quickly is because When you are an employee, the employer has to pay half of your self-employment tax. So that's
Yeah.
7.5% based on whatever they're paying you. So if they pay you 50,000, they're going to have to spend an additional 3 to 4 thousand in payroll taxes. That doesn't get into
Right.
the overtime rules that they have to be compliant with.
The insurance requirements.
The insurance requirements, if they are offering some sort of benefit plan like a 401k or an I
Right.
something, they've got to, typically they have to meet certain criteria rules about compensating all employees equally. Whereas an independent contractor, you hire them, you say you do this job, I pay you this rate, and more or less that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Um,
And
there's
so,
worker comp considerations too, right?
Mhm. So the what ended up happening was the Supreme Court of California in the Dymex case essentially says this is wrong. The way you're treating these people is wrong, and these workers have more rights. It's you need to protect our workers because it's going to mess with the economy generally if you don't. So it went from something like a 9 or 10 factor test that people would look at to determine if you're a contractor or an employee to a new test, which has three prongs.
And on the old test, I know you want to get to the three, but here's another thing they changed. The 10, there were 10 criteria. It was yes or no, but it wasn't, if you meet six of them, you're considered an employee or an independent contractor. There was a common sense, it was industry based. It didn't have to be, like if you met all 10, you
Well,
were
so
probably employee, but
yeah, it was really a gray test. So you could hit 9 of them, and the 10th one would be dispositive, saying that you were going the other way. So it was not something you could rely
that's
on.
also great job by you, Noah. I have to say, great test. I love that. I'm going to steal that term, just so you know.
Cool. So the new test basically is three things. One, uh, well, the new test primarily actually said that if somebody is free from the control and direction of the company, so basically, does the company tell them what to do, tell them how to do it, and tell them when to do it? If the person engages in work outside the company's main business, so for example, if it's somebody who works for a painting company and the company's job is to, the company's purpose is to go out and paint houses. If that painter is working for that company, they're an employee. But if I'm a lawyer and I hire somebody to come in here and paint my walls, that they're not in the business of practicing law. They're just painting the walls. And then the third thing is, and they already work independently from the company, doing the same kinds of things as the company. So those are the three main tests that you look at now, and you have to meet all three of those in order to not be an employee, because California also said the default is you're an employee, not an independent contractor, unless you prove otherwise. And so this basically codified, what California did in AB5 is they just made Dynamex a written law through their state legislature. And everybody started freaking out
And rightfully
because,
so.
and rightfully so, because think about it. What do you do on Twitch? As a streamer, your job is to go online on a channel provided by Twitch, broadcast content, which is Twitch is in the business of providing content, and they are free from the control and direction of the company to a certain extent. But as we just discussed,
You have
under
to
the
meet
content
all three.
right under the content license agreement with Twitch, they do control when you can post that content elsewhere and how you can go live and all that kind of thing, and what can be used. So there's an argument that if AB5 were applied to a Twitch broadcaster, all of which are independent contractors, um, all of a sudden Twitch would find itself with millions of new employees. If you look at the stats, Twitch, broadcast every single year. They champion. We have this many new broadcasters, this many new partners, this many new affiliates, and good to all those people. But think about if all those people suddenly cost Twitch 20 to 30% more. We already know that Twitch did not meet its advertising goals this past year in terms of generating revenue. What if Twitch also had the extra expense of paying benefits to its broadcasters? One, it'd be so much harder to become a partner, to become an affiliate, to even stream on Twitch, because Twitch would generate revenue even from someone who's not affiliated or partnered.
I would
But
argue as well that this would destroy the qualifications to be a partnered broadcaster or an affiliate. I think if you take kind of the doomsday, and I'm going to cover Noah in this respect. This is Noah's interpretation, right? There's an
right,
argument to be made, and there's no sort of like precedent here for this, but we'll get to some other carve outs with it. But if
right.
you take the doomsday, because I would say this is a doomsday scenario, you end up carving out like I think what you would see happen is the bottom. If you just stream for fun and you don't stream, you're done. Like you can't stream on our platform anymore, right?
Yeah,
because they would not even open themselves open to classifying you as an employee.
Right. And so this while it was targeted at the gig economies of Lyfts and Ubers and ride sharing stuff, it really could significantly affect Twitch. But there is a solution for Twitch and for other companies, and this is where we're getting to.
Don't allow a single Californian to stream on Twitch. Got
that is
Moving
right.
on.
Californians
great
are
to
right
see
out. See you guys. No, that's not it at all. And that's also not how venue and law works. So good job, Ernest. But
I hate you.
what happened here is Twitch, they very potentially could change it so that every single streamer would have to register with an LLC or be removed from the platform. Because under the law, an individual, me, Noah, you, Ernest, you, random person in chat, hello chat, can be classified as an employee versus an independent contractor. But a company working as an independent contractor can't be classified as an employee. And so if Twitch were to hire me, Noah, as an independent contractor, there's a chance that I could be classified as an employee. But if Twitch were to hire my LLC, there's no chance that my LLC could ever be classified as an employee. That'll always be an independent contractor because it's his own independent business. So
right, because it's not even, and I'm gonna get back at you a little bit. It's not actually an independent contractor. It's just this whole separate business. It's like hiring. It's not even so. It's kind of removed from that whole equation.
Right.
It's not even factored into it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is. So the question that we have here is whether or not Twitch is going to Amazon. Let's think about it from an even bigger level. Amazon is going to risk having this happen.
Well, so put a pin in that. So let's take a step back. Let's talk about how some companies will approach this because we've already seen it happen, right?
Right, so, exactly. You got a good example.
Yeah, so we've seen how some companies will approach this. So if you kept up on the news at all, when AB5 happened, Vox, the news media site, cut a bunch of their freelance journalists because they just were not going to run the risk of having these employees, contractors, be deemed as employees.
And we're not talking about dozens of people. We're talking about hundreds of freelance journalists were completely cut from Vox's roster. They can't contribute anymore because Vox wasn't even going to risk the chance that all of a sudden they had a massive liability. And so I would definitely say that Vox is an example of how this could happen. And ironically, a lot of those freelance journalists on Vox were advocating for this. And now they find themselves out. Yeah. So, really?
Yep. He's like in sync. Now the thing about that is with the law, a lot of independent industries were advocating for exemptions and carve-outs. And we're not going to get into some of the carve-outs that occurred. And I was talking to Noah during show prep today. I was like, I saw a headline today that's relevant to what we were discussing, and I saw that the truck driving industry had gotten a carve out, and he corrected me. No, it's just an injunction for them to try to get a carve out, and so this is still being live and interpreted. And I think, from my view of it now, I would say that they passed this with good intentions. However, they didn't think about how widespread and how disruptive it would be to employment as a whole. And one thing you've said a lot when we were talking about the show and prepping for it is that, there's this saying that as California goes, so goes the nation, right? Because changing gears a little bit, quick tangent, is that California kind of dictates the emission standards for cars for the broader U.S. as a whole, right? Because they have, it's a huge state just in terms of geographic landmass, in terms of earnings, in terms of tax they pay, in terms of issues that they face. They have a huge farming community. So a lot of these issues, when California addresses it, a lot of the country will fall in line.
Right, exactly.
And go ahead. No,
I would say that you're starting to see this even start to occur in other places. So there is a major company in the gaming space who has informed me that a lot of my clients who don't currently have LLCs need to have LLCs so they'll stop working with them. And that brought me to the conclusion that this is not just important for broadcasters. It's important for people considering receiving sponsorships, because typically sponsorships are done through contractor work because it's a one-off. This is less likely, but major companies such as 2K are not going to run the risk that their stream team or their somebody that they randomly sponsor for a one-off stream are going to suddenly be employees and they have to pay them a whole ton more. And so that I will say that company in particular, I have heard, is requiring you to have an LLC to continue to work with you. Now, it's important to note that this went into effect on January 1st. Like, we're 20 days into this. So the timeline is just a matter of it needs to be in place already. And most companies are still trying to figure out what it means. But for example, there's a lot of litigation going on around it. So there might be changes coming down the pipeline, but a lot of companies are already taking the steps to protect themselves.
Because it's already the law, right? And so just because there are lawsuits and interpretations requested pertaining to certain industries, that does not preclude, hopefully I'm using that right, that's for Galen, by the way, it does not preclude someone from suing for classification as an employee, theoretically. Correct, Noah? Just give me the head nod because I see you're muted. So Noah agrees. And so that aspect of a game company requiring someone that they want to work with for sponsored content can be direct, that's one way they're mitigating their risk. They're saying, look, we'll still work with you, but you got to have an LLC in place or we're just not going to do it. And kind of the broader point, that's we're at the halfway point, is I wanted to say kind of our big broad point was that if you are a full-time broadcaster and you have any interest or have done any sponsored content, you more likely than not need an LLC. I don't want to say definitively because I hate giving definitive advice. You can feel free, Noah, if you feel differently, but it's you probably need one. More likely than not. I mean, that's how it would skew in my opinion.
So you probably do need one. You need some form of entity, and again, it's going to be specific to who you are and what your particular circumstances are. And it is very easy. I will tell everybody in chat right now, it's very easy to set up an LLC. It's very difficult to maintain an LLC and have the proper backing and paperwork behind it. And it's very easy to mess up. So while there's a lot of folks out there that say, hey, go to LegalZoom, if you spend $200 at LegalZoom setting up an LLC, you are going to do it wrong, or LegalZoom is going to do it wrong. And then you are going to be in a lot of trouble. You're going to lose your LLC or think that you have an LLC and then actually not have a proper LLC where you need to have one. And then you are going to get in trouble. I recommend hiring a professional to do it, whether it's myself or someone else. The reason I'm saying this now is because I see a lot of people in chat like giving some kind of legal advice. So be very careful with how you do that. But make sure you at least consult a professional so you've properly set up an LLC.
Now, I have a question for you, Noah, though, but this is Twitch chat. And I don't know if you know about Twitch chat. Twitch chat is 700 IQ. They are
700
challenger in League, in TFT. They
big
are
brain strats.
Yeah, they're the best. So clearly they're completely right on everything, right?
Yeah.
You're telling me that's not true?
No, that's 100% true.
But I like ripping. But yeah, it's one of those things where it is quote unquote simple, but it's one of those things where it's also very simple to make a small mistake here or there and it could be costly. And so to that point, Chef has a question for you, Noah. So what are the issues with something like LegalZoom as opposed to going to an actual lawyer?
Right. So LegalZoom is crap. And if somebody wants to clip this and send this to LegalZoom, fine with it. I've said this live everywhere. LegalZoom is crap. LegalZoom is not qualified to give you legal advice. LegalZoom is fill out a form and pray that you did it right, because they can't assist you in any way, shape, or form. LegalZoom won't help you in maintaining your LLC properly. And I get a ton of business from people who go to LegalZoom and set up an LLC, and they do it wrong, or they accidentally let it lapse, or they forget to add a part of the filing, and LegalZoom keeps their money. And then they come to me and pay me 6 times what it would have cost to just set up properly in the first place.
Would you say going to a registered agent would be better? Like if you had an option, LegalZoom or registered agent?
They're completely different things.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, I've seen some registered agents like offer the LLC setup.
I would say that any of those sites like a Rocket Lawyer or LegalZoom, anything that offers to file it for you, be very careful of. Okay. Because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be wrong. So
gotcha. So anything that offers at that point, you're better off doing it yourself. For it. Gotcha.
Yeah. I see. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. So, a lot of companies are already requiring you to have an LLC in order to work with you, because they don't want you to be an employee. They want to save money. And so some companies are going to stay the course, and they're going to say, that's not how you interpret the law. And, that's a valid opinion. I think that they're wrong, but that's a valid opinion for them to hold. And if the law changes against them, they'll change ahead of time. That said, if you are a broadcaster, or you want to be a broadcaster, and you want to make this a viable thing for you to do, you need to go ahead and take the steps to protect yourself. And if you don't have an LLC or some sort of entity behind that, you're already behind the 8 ball, especially with this AB5 regulation.
And one thing specifically, I clipped your question earlier, so we'll get to it at the end, and I'll clip that other one as well. But I get a question a lot, well, what does an LLC do for me for a tax filing perspective?
So what does it do for you for a tax filing?
Oh, wow, look at that. Is that just a water? I'm going to crank a 90 on this one. That's what the kids say, right? Crank a 90s?
Yeah, sure.
Typically, for most broadcasters, unless you have like a co-stream with a spouse or a partner or friend or something, you're typically what's known as a single-member LLC. And Noah, so I'm going to kick it back to you on that. I'll give you this watermelon back. What's a single-member LLC?
A single-member LLC is an LLC that it has a single member.
Correct. So, in other words, when you have multiple members, your filing requirements change. With a single-member LLC, you'll still be filing in the U.S. in the United States as a Schedule C. If you haven't put together a more formal tax structure, whether it's one of the other filing types, this actually doesn't change anything for you just creating an LLC. So it's a good way to keep things simple and have some sort of legal protection and be able to have all these other barriers. I would say, and Noah, you'd be able to talk more on this, there's this concept of piercing the corporate veil, right? So in other words, what we're talking about is a single member LLC provides that protection for your personal assets.
Right, yeah. So for example, I have a client who received a lawsuit. And that lawsuit was to the tune of $4 million, which is money they don't have. And they've never seen $4 million cumulatively in their lifetime. But they had properly set up their LLC. And so they had a separate bank account. They were a single member LLC. They maintained their LLC as an entity completely separate from themselves. So they had person, LLC. LLC had its own bank account, had its own tax ID, everything. And they did everything through that. Their contracts were with the LLC, etc. So when the lawsuit came in, it named him obviously, but it also named the LLC because that's who the contract was with. Well, we were able to get that thing kicked out. We were able to settle it because the contract was with the LLC. The LLC was properly maintained and properly capitalized, and there was no way that the opposing party was going to get $4 million, even if they won, which we didn't think they were. So having an LLC helped that person not lose their house because they properly maintained it. Now, if that person had an LLC with a separate bank account, but they paid their personal cable bill out of that bank account. They don't use cable as part of their job. Or, they, bought a car for their girlfriend or something like that, and their girlfriend's not part of their job. Then that is using the company as a personal piggy bank. And for that, you can have the corporate veil pierced, which means essentially here's a veil and the lawsuit's going to go right through it and hit you personally. So that is why it's important to set up corporate formalities, such as having a proper operating agreement and whatnot, to make sure that the company is completely separate from you.
And that's really just having what I call good corporate hygiene. And specifically, it's that separate business bank account. You run everything through it. You run all of your direct expenses. And then you need anything personally, you just do a transfer between the business bank account and your personal bank account.
Right, exactly.
It's not difficult to actually have this structured appropriately. It's just a little extra headache. But once you have it set up, it tends to run pretty smoothly.
Oh, it's very easy. I mean, so sometimes I set up an LLC for a client and then I don't talk to them again for like a year until it's time to file the annual report, because LLCs are so easy to smoothly run, especially with the right professionals.
I'm going to clip that from Adam for
Cool.
later as well, because I think there's a good question in there.
Wow, we are flying through our time. Holy crap.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing is, we try to keep the show short because the other show is so good at discussing broader Twitch things that we don't want to overload them with our big brain 700 IQ Twitch chat meme streams.
Oh my God. Yeah,
exactly.
By the way, this is a really good chat. Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us in 2020. Welcome to Serial.
Exactly. So you want to tackle some of these questions?
Yes. Let me see if in our outline, is there anything else we want to discuss?
I don't know. I don't typically, read the outline.
That's fair. So we talked about that. Do you see? Okay, so before we go dive straight into questions, how soon do you think we will have do you think, from what you've read on the legal side of it, you're more plugged in than us. Do you see anything changing in the short term on this bill? And by short term, I mean 6 months. So where they, offer guidance that walks back the 3-prong test or anything like that, or something happening through this current upcoming election potentially? I mean, we're not putting you in the prediction game, but just more of because this is going to be, and a hem and haw, here's my point, is that you have this issue where someone could be classed as an employee in California,
right?
But then federally, would they still be classed as an employee?
That's
right?
A great question.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to answer that by answering a different question that you didn't ask. Okay. Which is the most lawyer thing I'm going to say today. So perfect. I think that we're going to get some clarity on what's going on here, because first of all, companies aren't waiting for a lawsuit or to have, all their contractors suddenly be employees. They're taking action now. That said, immediately after this went into effect, there was a truck driver injunction that was issued earlier, I think last week, late last week.
Okay.
Yeah. Which basically exempted truck drivers from becoming employees under this, because first of all, the truck drivers didn't want to become employees, which was hilarious, because if you think about it, they invest in their own rig. They basically built their own company. And all of a sudden, that would belong to the company. And so they want to have their own, set their own hours. They want to be independent contractors. But that also said, the injunction was put in place. An injunction, for those of you who don't know, is essentially a stop, where it's
getting tagged and freeze tag.
Right. It's getting tagged and freeze tagged. So no, yes, actually, yes. Well done, Ernest.
You're welcome.
But essentially, the court said, okay, this doesn't apply to this particular class of persons. In this case, truck drivers, because they're saying that this legislation, AB5, is being preempted by federal legislation. So here's an important thing to know: the highest law in the land in our nation is the Constitution.
Oh,
it's not bird law; it's the Constitution. And the Constitution sprouts federal law. Federal law allows for state law. State law allows for local law. So local law gets preempted by state law. Essentially, state law trumps local law. Federal law trumps state law and local law. and Constitution trumps all three. So what they're saying here is that as it applies to truck drivers, the federal statute prevents truck drivers from being classified in this way. So that's why there's a stop there. That's a long way of saying that. But I think that you might start seeing that in different industries as well. Like for example, Uber and Lyft have already tried to band together, and they've pooled $110 million to fight this. And we might get legislation coming up even in 2020 to overturn this already. But that said, I think it's going to stay.
Okay. And I think one thing I want to put before we get to questions is that if you follow Streamer Twitter at all, I feel like, and this is my perception, that the concept is like a lot of streamers would like to be employees, but I feel like once they see what that entails and where the bottom falls out in terms of who makes the cut and who doesn't,
right?
I feel like that would be the worst day on Streamer Twitter. And we've had some bad ones, but I feel like it would go 2 weeks solid. This would be the Secret Wars of Marvel.
This would be Secret Wars, and because you'd have people who got it and people who didn't, and you'd be wondering who got it.
And you'd have people who got it who didn't want it, and people who didn't get it who did. It'd be a whole nightmare.
You don't know how good you have it, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Because one of the things that I've always wanted is to make sure that my clients get health insurance properly somehow. That's a dream of mine. And so this would get it for them, but a lot of them would lose their jobs. And so I think that classifying, getting your LLC to set up will give you the most control over your future. It'll allow you to for sure keep going. It'll give you some tax benefits likely. It'll give you a liability shield, and it'll allow you to continue to grow as a streamer. And AB5 just accelerated that process for a lot of people. So now where an LLC is something that people will aspire to get, I think it's very quickly going to be something that you cannot do this without. And so it's going to be, instead of being a milestone, it'll be a barrier to entry.
Gotcha. All right, so we're getting into questions. Feel free to throw them in chat. We have some queued up already. I'm looking at the Google Doc, just so you know, Noah.
Sure.
At the bottom of the page.
I can read it.
Do you see the third question? Is that too specific, or can we ask that one?
So I will tell you now, and I double pasted one of these for you. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But so I can, like I said before, we've had the disclaimer posted a million times. It's still in chat right now. I cannot give specific legal advice. So if you have asked a question with specific that I would need to talk to you individually about, I will tell you and try and answer as best I can. So you want to go ahead and read off a couple?
Sure. So now this third one, I don't know how to do it because I feel like this is a good one that we should talk about because this touches on the hiring a third party service. So yeah. I don't know how you want to phrase that to make sure that we're in compliance with your rules.
Or can we go ahead and ask it, and I'll disclaim where I need to.
Okay. So a person paid LegalZoom for a business fee to have an attorney work with them rather than just file the paperwork out online and have it registered with the California Secretary of State. Should the person be worried?
Whoa. Okay, so this gets into I would want to have that reviewed because a lot of things you see out there, like Legal Shield, offer to give you time with a real attorney. But think about this. If you were paying $25 to get an attorney who typically bills a lot more than that hourly, you are getting what you pay for. I know some attorneys who work with those, and they do not give the proper time of day to people. Not to disparage them, but they have clients that bill more than the $25 that Legal Shield is contractually obligated to do. So if you are out there and you are wondering whether or not you're okay, I would recommend setting up a consultation with an attorney. Most attorneys in this industry, myself included, offer free consults. Then I'm not here pitching myself. I'm here offering a service. I'm offering information. But if you do need help, I am happy to chat. We can set up a time.
What would you call it? Streamer/game industry legal world is very small.
It's a very small world. We know everybody. Yep. So if I'm not a good fit, I can find you someone who is.
Yep, because I love Noah. I think Noah's the best. But for whatever reason, it may just not be a good fit. right? And that's fine.
Right.
Like, you may just not like, someone who cranks 90s and can meme on you and sing Les Mis to you while on the
Hey,
call.
I will sing Les Mis as needed at St. Jude Summit this year. I'm looking forward to, by the way, donate to St. Jude. But at St. Jude Summit this year, I'm looking forward to karaoke night. I've already selected my songs.
Oh, a lot of Natalie Imbruglia, a lot of Torn.
No, a lot of Motion City soundtrack.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. I see. You can see that.
Yeah.
All right. So I have this. I'll tee up this question for myself. So this is for. I apologies. We didn't copy who asked the questions, but thank you so much for those.
Yeah.
So someone is transitioning from being a 1099 to a W-2. In other words, from an independent contractor to an employee. And so
Cool.
What sort of impact does that have? I'll give you the first crack at it because it does change their own liability, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, go ahead.
That's going to change from a federal level. You're going to have access to a lot more protections. From a state level, you could potentially have access to a lot more protections as well. It is never a bad thing. I will say that in your typical industry, which is not this one, it is not a bad thing to go from 1099 to W-2. If I'm working as a community manager for a major game and they have hired me as a 1099 contractor, and then they switch me over to an employee, typically that's viewed as a wonderful thing. I go full-time with them. But if you're a streamer, that could be horrible. And so switching over to that W-2, if your employer is doing that, that could potentially give you a lot of benefits. It also will mean that you have less freedom to do your job the way you were doing it, and your employer will take more control because they necessarily need to over how you do your job. But that said, that sounds like it might actually be a good thing. So congratulations.
The one thing that you could, from a tax perspective, you get hit on is that if you still have to come out of pocket, which should not be the case, but if you still have to come out of pocket for software licenses or things like that to do your job, you should make sure that you're getting at a minimum reimbursed for that, or they should be providing the tools for you.
Exactly.
Because you don't get to expense things as a W-2 employee. So in other words, actually, let's get into the MORO rules. Do you get reimbursed?
So MORO, for everybody, MORO is Morrison Rothman LLP. That's the law firm I work at. They're wonderful people, founded by Ryan Morrison, video game attorney on Reddit, and Ali Rothman, his partner, who is an amazing individual as well.
They are wonderful people. Here's my question for you. Do they reimburse your bar renewals? Or is that precluded under your profession?
No. Morrison Rothman does cover many of my professional expenses.
Okay.
And that's a huge benefit to working for them.
And here's the thing. If they did not, Noah would still come out of pocket because he's not going to not renew his law license.
I've got to have my law license.
Right? So the point, and the reason I made it pointed, is that if that was the case, he would not be able to take that expense on his taxes. He just has to spend that money and it's out of hand.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I love where I work. I love my job. I love going to work every single day because they take good care of me, and I also get the chance to appear on stuff like this. So,
and so now I'm going to combine. I didn't copy this one, but I remembered from earlier, and it was a corporate veil type question.
Sure.
Someone was asking the question, hey, I've got a car and I use it personally, but I also use it for work. I'm an independent contractor. I'm a broadcaster. I have an ISP, but I also use that personally. What's the best way to structure that where we've got these gray area expenses where there's a personal benefit, but there's also a express business purpose as well?
So that's a tough question for me to answer because it gets into very specific stuff. I would generally say the best way to do it is if you are using it for the business, then you're better for this, Mr. Tax Guy.
Well, okay, so I was going to say,
take that?
Yeah, so I was going to say, typically, I look at it in terms of two ways, in terms of magnitude of expense and how much you're using it for business. So, for example, I have some clients that do some modeling as well as broadcasting and things like that, whether cosplay or what have you, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so let's say they buy makeup, right? But they also just wear makeup in their everyday lives. I tell them two things. Either you should have a express makeup kit for shoots and being photo ready and things like that, or you should be, expensing it partially business, partially personal. So in other words, if you buy something, it's $100 and you use it 60% for business, 40% for personal, you only take $60.
Yeah, and your consideration there from the legal perspective is that if you are saying something is business and the business is covering it, but it's actually primarily personal, there's a chance you could pierce the corporate veil and lose that protection.
Right. And so what I've said is that if it's majority business, then use the business account. But you got to be honest with yourself. So in other words, because there are going to be those gray areas, right? Like you think of it this way: you own a business, you buy coffee for the office. It doesn't really have a business purpose. I mean, it does. Like it's kind of an overhead cost. I mean, I do buy coffee.
When you're saying that, you're assuming that coffee is not essential for life.
Correct. Well, maybe you're not a coffee drinker. Maybe you're a tea drinker. I'm not. Okay. That's not me. I give myself panic attacks with coffee this time of year. So that's the issue. Now, I think also, and you correct me because I'm going to dip a toe into your realm of expertise, Noah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tread very lightly. Is that what's going to dictate this is your own state laws and regs more so than the federal rules, right? Because, and I always say that, but I could be completely wrong. You tell me.
I would say it's about 50-50 actually.
Okay. Gotcha.
So.
All right.
And the answer is it all depends.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where those things that are express for business. So you buy a streaming rig, or you buy,
right?
Where those? Did you see those CES like where they'll drop the PS4 into the case for you and then have the capture card? Yeah, it's crazy expensive from what I saw, but it's pretty cool.
I missed a lot of cool CES stuff this year. I'm looking forward to going next year.
I was busting your boy, very quick tangent, because I think you come for the knowledge, but you stay for the witty banter between Noah and I. And
right, yeah.
Is that Josh was saying the coolest thing or dumbest thing he saw at CES was a smart door. And I was like, what's the point of that? It's like, oh, it's a peephole. And he was like, hilarious. Basically.
So Josh is our friend Santa Dev. He works for Tiltify, and he's an amazing person.
He is the sweetest person in the industry, and if you ever get a chance to know him, you would all benefit from it.
Adam Bomb Body says CS had the toilet paper robot. I have not seen that. Oh my gosh.
All right. So we've got some people looking up computers and toilet paper robots, which is a good kind of like leaving point. I'm going to scroll through.
If you take nothing else away from this, keep in mind that there is a toilet paper robot out there. No, I'm kidding. So I think that was most of the questions. Right. Generally, we're seeing a lot of
corporate veil and like what happens if I'm a contractor. I don't see anything else. I'm scrolling to the chat that we missed. So big picture, I would say, to our question at the bottom on today's topic is, do streamers need an LLC? My perspective from this, and Noah, you give your take as well, is that if you are a full-time broadcaster and you want to do SpawnCon, you need an LLC.
I think, actually, I will say that if you are a part or full-time broadcaster, you want to continue doing it, you should probably set up an LLC. Anyone from affiliate up, it makes sense to do it, and it's probably the best way to go, judging by the AB5 regulation and what it might mean for you.
And for perspective on those differing opinions, I'm a tax person, right? So to me, you're not really, from just an LLC in and of itself, you're not getting any tax efficiency, any tax edge. So to me, it's like I'm trying to assess risk for people, which I should not be doing. Full disclaimer. Noah is saying, no, dummies, you all need an LLC, right? Am I putting words in your mouth?
Or something. Now, like I said, that's not specific advice, but you need an entity of some sort.
So, yeah. So, I mean, and that's coming from someone who works with a ton of broadcasters, so he has a much better perspective than myself or Galen would have on this sort of thing. So if he's saying you need it, I would err on that side for sure.
Well, yeah, because I want to see this space thrive. This is something where, obviously our friends who were even on the show right before this, Stream Scene, we want to make sure they're able to continue to do their job. I don't want anybody to wake up one day and find that they are precluded from being on Twitch, on Mixer, on Caffeine, on Facebook, on YouTube, whatever, because they haven't properly set up an entity already. Because if you lose the opportunity, if you lose your partnership, it's really hard to get back. And so there's a lot of reasons to do it, and it just makes sense at this point.
Sirius, that is the other button for what we wanted to name the show.
Yeah. So Sirius says, so what I've taken away from this is the lawyers have terrified me and I need a consultation with an attorney, lol. So I will say a lot of people are scared of lawyers, and lawyers aren't scary. Well, no, there's scary lawyers out there, but you need to find someone you jive with. So I offer free consultations. And this is a great place to say where people can find us, right, Ernest?
Yes, it is. We are on the way out. So as we do exits, this is Your Brand, Your Business. We're starting 2020 off. We're going to do about 5 more shows before we take a break, regroup for the next kind of topic areas we're going to discuss. Noah is now considered a full-time official host. Congrats to Noah again. Glad to have you on board, buddy. Love your stupid face so much. But Noah, I'm the host, so you've got to tell us where they can find you first. So thank you.
So you can find me, and Chef Hazmat has it there. You can find me. I work for the law firm Morrison Rothman LLP. You can find that at morrisonrothman.com. My Twitter bio has how to contact me. Feel free to DM me. You can follow me there at twitter.com/mylawyerfriend, because I'm your lawyer friend. And that's where I post all my memes and or legal advice, depending on what my flavor of the day is.
And
I'm also on Twitch, and I'm going to be broadcasting this May for St. Jude.
Oh, awesome. Do you already have your incentives and all that fun stuff lined up?
I haven't worked out. I still need to send out 2 incentives from last year. So
ties? Is it the ties still?
Ties. They are ties.
They are ties. Yeah, Noah had a monster setup. I think we did we did it with Galen, right? We played that.
Good job, Adam Bombody. Adam Bombody saw us at TwitchCon in 2018.
Oh, hey. Mazel tov. Thank you so much. That's always good to... A fan. We'll call it a fan? Call it an eager person to learn.
Ironically, Wes in chat is one of those people who I still need to send a tie to.
Wow. Wes, I want you to know something. You have my full permission. If you go to an event and Noah is at it and he's not sent the tie, you can slap him in the face, open-handed.
Please don't.
Anyway,
okay.
We're continuing.
And where can they find you?
I am Ernest Jones. I am a CPA who works on the tax planning, tax preparation, representation services as it relates to broadcasters, game devs, anything and anyone who kind of supports the industry that we love and hold so dear. You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Warbnull, which is a dumb Star Wars handle that I refuse to let go even at this point of my life.
That's where you got it from.
Yeah. We talked about it. It was a comic book because I was a dumb kid, and I thought it was so cool that a Sith spirit possessed a spirit of armor and then had the blacksmith who made the armor put it on and took over his body. I thought that was incredibly dope. But I'm an idiot. But I'm also good at taxes, so you should probably look me up if you need tax help.
You should, and this is the time of year to do it.
This exit has gone on a little too long. I'm going to go ahead and mute Noah and mute myself, play some sweet Pretzel Rocks outro music. But thank you so much for joining us. If you have any suggestions for show topics or anything else, please look us up. And thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.